I'm only seeing
I could be
121
wrong. I could be wrong. Hold on.
on YouTube. I thought it was 122 as
Well, no,
well.
our last one was taken off YouTube.
So this is 123. That's right.
So this is
Okay. I was
episode.
looking on YouTube and on Spotify.
This is episode 123. It didn't take, dude. Did it not take? I mean, what, 4 hours for it to come
9
off?
hours. I think it was 9 hours. Well, I don't know exactly when they took it off, but somebody was saying, "Oh, your episode's not up." I can't remember who that was, but I think it was around 9 hours when I noticed it. But that's like you said, that's all algorithm. That's 100% algorithm. Nobody listened to that. You did the rebuttal or whatever you did. Nobody listened to it. And what did they say? They said some kind of crazy stuff,
Dude.
like scolding you.
Yeah, it
and
was
like
like
a scold threaten, right?
COVID-19 stuff. I'm like, what? And what's crazy is this. And I think we do, even to our detriment sometimes, we do a pretty good job of, I think, caveating, because one thing that I hate to do is, like, if you don't have the info, there's one thing to provide commentary. There's one thing to provide an editorial or an opinion, but like if you start stating things as facts and we don't know all the details, like I hate to do that. I hate to jump to the conclusion, even though we're right 9 times out of 10. But I think we do a pretty good job with that type of stuff. And with that there, it's like we were literally providing commentary on, and I won't even say his name because the algorithm will flag us again, but we were literally providing commentary on his interview, like our takeaway from his interview. And then you get flagged. And again, it's over a 2-hour show. So they tell us that we suck and that you can appeal. And so I appeal. Well, this time the appeals changed a little bit because now I can add some data in there. And I specifically put in there, hey, look, we provided commentary, da 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 da. It came back. It had to be within an hour. I'm like, so out of the 2-hour episode, somebody actually, it just goes to show that nobody gives a crap over there. And what bothers me about it is, I mean, fortunately for us, we're freaking nonprofit, but there are a lot of folks that rely on YouTube for a significant portion of their income with the shows they do and some of our competitors and this and that. And that would really piss me off, dude, to be banned for a week and they can actually demonetize the episode. So if we ever, we're going to make money off of it, they just say, well, nope, you're not receiving anything for this.
That would have definitely been demonetized for sure.
Yeah.
And I don't know exactly which part it was. One of our listeners, I won't call him out by name, but he'll know who he is when I'm talking about it. One of our listeners said, "Oh, well, I know why you guys got demonetized," and it was the discussion on what actually causes death when you have a disease or whatever. And he was saying that, and he was specifically pointing at me. He's like, "You're the reason you got demonetized because I was talking about pneumonia, right? That's what
Right.
eventually ends up killing you from a broken hip or whatever." And he's like, "Well, that's like saying it wasn't the fall that killed him; it was the impact of the ground." And I'm like, "Okay, well, but a coroner or a doctor or a coroner actually, when they determine the final cause of death, it's not you fell off a building. That's what caused the blunt impact that crushed your skull for sure. Yes." And I don't know what kind of, I should have talked to him more about that. We just had limited time to talk. You know how it is, Roger. You just have limited time to talk. You have like 10 minutes, every hour you have like 10 minutes to talk. And most times you don't even have time for that. But it was good. He liked the episode and I appreciated his feedback. But yeah, like I said, for sure, that would have been demonetized 100%.
Well,
and I don't know.
They hit us on COVID.
Here's what
they hit us on COVID.
Yeah, that's what pissed me off. Well, they hit you on COVID.
Yeah, that was the reason they gave us.
They hit us on COVID. Well, I'd have to go back and listen to it again because I did go back and listen to it. I'd have to listen to it again and see what claims we made because, man, you are right. If at any time I'm speculating,
sure,
and passing it off as fact, I do not intend to do that. When I know something's a fact, I'll say it. But we do speculate a lot. This is an opinion show. This is what this is. But we do come with facts a lot of times. And I would really like, again, like you said, the algorithm flag, like we said, the algorithm flags something and they just shut it down without listening. But what makes me mad, what makes me upset is if they were going to cut us off for anything, it shouldn't have been we're saying it too often. This one's going to get cut off. It shouldn't have been the SARS thing. It should have been what you were talking about we're gonna get cut off again. I don't want to say it. It should have been the stuff with the autism, right?
Right.
Even though you backed it up with all those studies and all that stuff that was said on the Joe Rogan podcast. And I finally went back and listened to most of the RFKG. I shouldn't have said it. This is such a tightrope. Y'all don't understand how ridiculously BS this feels sitting here doing this, recording with Roger right now. But I mean, I don't know. I'll have to go back and listen again, man.
Now, dude, I don't think we said. I mean, what we did was we provided commentary on the Wall Street finance guy that came back and made his statements, yada yada. And he's just a numbers guy. I mean, and I haven't done like a deep dive into him or whatever. Just a couple quick gurgles and whatever. But what I could tell and what I took away from it was he's a pure numbers guy, no medical background, and like, hey, when you look at the numbers with the data that's provided, this is the conclusion that he came to. So that's what we were commentating on. I don't think we went down any farther path with the whole COVID-19 or anything like that. So just kind of amazing. Like you're right, there are many other things in there that you could have banned us for. Other than that, that's like that's the small stuff. Going back to the listener, and I'll get to see him next week, so it'll be good. We'll have some more 10-minute chats. But I think the difference is with that is yep. You got to be careful here because again, uh, that the specific illness itself probably would not have killed you, other than man-made controls that were introduced. That's what led to a lot of deaths,
There you
right?
go. And he said that, and he said
Right.
that early on. I was saying the last episode about the dream that my wife had, and she kind of walked me through it. She has some experience in the medical field, and that listener was saying the exact same thing. And you said he'll know what we're talking about. No one else will. So I think if everyone listens and knows what we're talking about, there was a certain medical procedure that was performed early on uh, during the episode, the pandemic, that turned out to be not so good. And our listener called that really early on,
Yep.
as did my wife. So I think we all agree on that. But that's so ridiculous. I, you know, so okay. So let me change the subject real quick. I was going to ask you how you felt about not being, being how many years younger than that member of the Kennedy family and not looking as good as him doing push-ups on
That
Venice
dude's
Beach or whatever he's
jacked,
doing.
man.
That dude looks good. Well, he may not believe in vaccines, but he believes in certain other pharmacological things
Oh,
that you can put in
absolutely.
your body, because there is no way you look that good without putting some SARMs or growth hormone or something in your body. But hey, whatever works for him. He looks good though. He looks good,
So if he's
and
on TRT at
I
his age, because he's in his 70s, right? So
I believe so.
if he's on TRT, I mean, for a guy who's in his 70s, just straight TRT, can he get that way? I mean, I guess he could just up
I
his dosage, right?
He's 69. So I don't know. Everyone's different, and of course, I think he's probably on some growth hormone because he's wealthy, and growth hormone's expensive, and he's probably on a little bit of that. He's probably on a little bit of TRT. But again, you can't just do that and eat donuts and
Right.
fried food. He has a work ethic, but dude, it's if somebody came up to the gym, natty or not, he's gonna be like, yeah, not.
Yeah.
There's no way, and I bet he'd admit it. But yeah, he looks good, and I guarantee what's going through his mind as he's working out on Venice Beach. And that one clip where he's doing push-ups and he's struggling, he actually came out and tweeted or something that he was like, "Hey, that was my last set of like 10, so you got to cut me some slack." But I guarantee what's going through his mind is, "Hey, old man Joe Biden challenged me to push-ups,
Yeah.
and we'll see what's what."
Well, it is interesting though because you bring up and again we have no idea what he's on, so I don't even I think the assumption is at a minimum TRT. I don't even know how jacked you can get from that. I mean, I guess you could just pump enough of it in your body that whatever. But it's just amazing when you have somebody, and I don't want to call him anti-vax, but he's been he strongly criticized vaccines, right? So when you have somebody like that because it's a poison in your body from him, but then to turn around and let's say it's something above and beyond TRT that could be equally as dangerous for your body. It's just kind of weird. It's just like, you know what, I'm not going to do that, but I'll put this in there. Heck yeah, man.
There are doctors out there, and I think we've talked about it before here. There are doctors out there that specialize in that kind of stuff. I mean, all you have to do is look at Chris Hemsworth
Yeah,
in the Thor movie and be like, okay, that guy's probably doing it the most healthy way possible.
right.
So, I mean, there are doctors out there that specialize in it that are going to cycle you on and off. You're going to pay for it. You're going to pay for it. But I do, he looks healthy to me. But I, I don't know. Who knows? We don't know. That's the whole point. But yeah, dude, just regular old TRT. Like I'm on TRT, and it's a very low dosage. Uh, it would take me years of working out really hard. I'm not on enough to make me look like that.
Right.
Just by within a year. There's no way. Uh, and he's 69. Dude is
Yeah.
20 years older than me. So yeah, but whatever, man. Good for him. Whatever works. But it is a little bit ironic,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's what I was
It's a
looking
little
for,
bit
irony.
ironic.
And I think, like
But
you said, though, there is a big, when you get that kind of money, and I think this is the difference, and this is where steroids and that type of stuff gets a bad rap, because it's not an over the counter thing where you just take it, buy a bottle, and they say, hey, take 2 a day, and then you're going to end up being jacked. And that's the way that they try. And it's not just with steroids; it's with everything, right? Any of the precursors, this and that. It's and I take my own share of multivitamins and other things, and it's all, hey, take 3 of these a day and drink 8 ounces of water and whatever. And the difference is, I think it ends up giving it a bad name because people more people get side effects from it than there would be if they actually had a doctor or a physician that's monitoring them, looking, which these guys do, right? They're wealthy, so he's got a personal physician that's like, okay, let me draw your blood. Let's look at your body type. Let's look at your diet. Let's look at your exercise. This is what you need. And then, like you said, hey, we're going to keep you on this for 6 weeks. We're going to do blood tests on you every week. And then after 6 weeks, you're going to come back and then we're going to cycle you off or whatever the case is. And I think in that, you obviously limit some of the side effects. And I'm sure, like you said, I mean, you end up paying for it in the end some way. But when you have a doctor there, I think it's very minimized as opposed to the, hey, man, here's the bottle, take 4 of these a day and end up, jacked.
yeah, yeah, it's a give and a take, man. It's a give and a take for sure. When, we could belabor this all day, but one thing I want to ask you about, or not, I want to comment. I want your comments on this. I think we said is before we started the podcast, way before in 2016 when Trump was running for office, and I remember going back and forth with people who were with Republicans who were anti-Trump back then, and very anti-Trump. And I was just like, dude, this is about the Supreme Court,
Yes.
idiot. At this point, this is about the Supreme Court. You can like him or hate him, but look at who's on the Supreme Court. This guy could, I was saying 2, but it ended up being 3, right?
Right. Yep.
Yeah. And I was like, it's just this simple, folks. You have to vote because it's about the Supreme Court. It's not about Trump. And I think that especially this week, we really got our comeuppance on that. Those of us who are saying this is about the Supreme Court. And I found myself thinking while I was driving, thinking about these Supreme Court decisions that came down, which I guarantee you've done more research on than I have. But I was thinking, if Trump gets the nomination again, it's going to be the same argument. Now, you and I are a little bit different. I think he's not the right man anymore. But if he gets the nomination, I will vote because you never know.
Sure.
You never know what's going to happen. Clarence Thomas is getting up there in years. I think we're safe, right?
Yeah. Other than Clarence
the other
Thomas,
ones,
yeah.
but you never know. So yeah, I felt a little vindicated for putting that stuff out there back then. But what of the decisions they made, what was your favorite?
Well, dude, I tell you, so here it's funny you ask that because it's like number one on my note sheet. I actually had to write some of this stuff down, and I want to back up a couple steps. The overarching idea that I took, or what I took away from this, they were big losses for the administration, big losses for Biden. And here's when you have to look at the fundamentals of what our country was founded on, right? Our Constitution, Bill of Rights, and it even goes back beyond that with the Federalist Papers, and goes back beyond that, with a lot of British law. But basically, you've had all these people with all these losses that have been on the other side. They've been on the wrong side of this. And this tells me, because these are some pretty big decisions, and we'll go through. I've got some notes, so we'll go through one at a time. But what it tells me is like, hey, man, there is a force out there when we talk about the extreme left that is not on par with what our founding fathers, wanted for our country. They are not on par with the basic document, the Constitution of the United States, that governs our country, right, and our government. They are not on board with that stuff, and it's different to have. There's different, a difference in, hey, I read this different, I interpret it different. Some of this stuff is pretty plain language. I mean, we'll get into it a little bit, but some of this is like, it's pretty cut and dry, man. But you get into some real ideological differences, and what I took away from it was a lot of the left, and I don't. It's not even all extreme. It's even some of the moderate left. Like, hey, man, you guys have a different vision for our country than what I believe our founding fathers wanted, and what specifically the Constitution lays out. Uh, I think when it comes to the big losses for Biden, at the end of the day, the voters got duped, because a lot of this stuff here, especially when we get into it with the with one of the Supreme Court rulings. I mean, it was pretty clear, man. Like the student loan forgiveness, right? I mean, it was pretty straightforward. People wanted to believe because they owed money, which I get it. Hey, man, if I owe $20,000 and you're going to forgive it, I mean, yeah, I'm on board with that. Whatever. But the stuff was pretty straightforward. And a lot of scholars on both sides of the house were like, yeah, this probably isn't going to fly. Same thing with the affirmative action. The 303 creative, and again, we'll get into these individually, was a little different. That's very interesting. That's the one to me that is very, very interesting, because what it does is it puts up, basic rights against each other. Hey, what is the priority? What right, supersedes the other right? And that is very intriguing to me. But at the end of the day, the Biden voters got duped. And sadly, it's like Lucy in the football. They're going to continue to get duped, because the left is going to, sit there and give whatever they can that's possibly free, get them on the government tit, right? Hey, here's all the handouts, because it becomes impossible to take back. And if you do take it back, you're a GOP and you do take it back. Well, now you're the bad guy. Now you're the evil guy. So that was my overarching thought about. Well, there's actually four rulings, because I'll throw this out there and then kick it back to you. As we talked about our last, what it was, episode 122, we aired it too early. We aired it 1 week too early, because the federal judge, I think in Louisiana, stops the federal government from pressuring social media companies to censor or flag content, and whatever else they do, right? We strongly suggest you take this down. And they were talking about during the pandemic, right? There was a lot of suppression, a lot of censoring of information. So specifically, they banned DHS, DOS, HHS, CDC, FBI, and the DOJ, and specifically Karine Jean-Pierre from communicating with any of them. Now, you'll never be able to enforce that, right? And a lot of those policies and stuff like that are set. It's not like Google and YouTube are going to be like, hey, we no longer have to do this anymore. So, episode 122 still won't air. But I think, maybe if we hit it a week later, who knows, man? But that was a pretty big ruling that, when it comes out for like First Amendment, man. I mean, when you look at Elon Musk buying Twitter, that was the whole point of this, or at least, on the surface, there's obviously a monetary piece to it. But, maybe if we'd have done 122 and dropped it this week, maybe, I don't know, man, maybe I relist it and we'll just roll the dice. What do you think? Or
I
not?
don't know, because we get another. I don't know. We get another strike.
I think we're out for a year.
So we have the affirmative action. We had the wedding website case thing, right? We had the First Amendment social media thing. Federal government cannot interact, whatever. And then what was the fourth?
So you had Biden versus Nebraska, Department of Education versus Brown, which was the student loans. You had 303 Creative LLC versus Alanis. I probably pronounced her name wrong. That's the website. And then you had the affirmative action, which was the Students for Fair Admissions, Inc. versus the President and Fellows of Harvard College and University of North Carolina.
Yeah, so I'd have to say that my favorite is the federal government and the social media one. That's my favorite because boy, that on its face is just wrong, just wrong. You know those FBI agents who were executing what they were told to execute should have known better. But in a lot of people's minds, they think, well, this is for the greater good. This is for the greater good. Like killing Alalaki. I think I've talked about this on
Yeah.
that episode. You know, we killed a U.S. citizen, and then later we killed his kids, and without due process. And although that may feel good while you're doing it, and a whole room of lawyers said, yeah, that's the right thing to do. We have no other choice. It's still wrong. Uh, and again, I had that one CIA guy tell me, well, there's a room full of lawyers. I was in there when they determined it was right. And I was like, yeah, there was a room full of lawyers at the Wannsee conference when they
Yeah.
determined the answer to the Jewish question, and it was 100% legal. So don't come at me with that BS. Okay. Same thing with this First Amendment thing. I just, I try to tell people this, and I think most people understand that just because someone's in the FBI, just because someone's in the CIA, just because someone's in the Army or DOD or DHS or whatever it is, they are not infallible. You get caught up in the, I don't want to say power, but I don't know, the cycle of what we're doing is right, and we got to do this. We're going to save lives with this COVID thing, and we just got to limit the disinformation, and limit the Hunter Biden story with the laptop because it's the right thing to do. Russian disinformation, but at the end of the day, you got to step back. And this is why I tell people, especially my daughter, it's like that oath you take is so important because you have to be very solemn with yourself and realize I have to understand what the Constitution says,
Right.
right? And let me ask you this: I'm going to give you a pop quiz. I'm going to put you on the spot,
Uh-oh.
okay? And now we're going down a different. So I'm going to put you on the spot. So there's an officer of oath of enlistment, or I'm sorry, there's an officer oath and there's an enlisted oath. Do you know the big difference?
I did. Not off the top of my head.
Okay, the big difference is enlisted actually have the option to not follow an unlawful order. Okay, if you read through what the oath is, the officers, it doesn't say that.
Interesting.
It's basically officers, if they are given an unlawful order, they have to resign their commission on the spot. But
Wow.
so the responsibility is, I don't know. I don't know if the responsibility is bigger or whatever, but they resign their commission on the spot. And risk, think of that. You're given an order on the battlefield is unlawful. So on the spot, you resign your commission. What are you risking? You're risking your life, as an officer. It's like, well, you're being seditious or whatever. So anyway, the people are fallible, right? People on the ground are fallible. I'm sure it feels real nice for those FBI agents to go into, Twitter headquarters and Facebook headquarters, lining out their next job because that's what was on their mind when they went in there working with those high level, C-suite Facebook type people is, well, this is my next job. So that was my favorite. What I liked about the wedding website one, let me just give my thought on that,
Yeah.
my
No,
initial
good.
thought. So with the wedding one, that's a tricky one. It's actually very tricky because I heard somebody put it this way. It's like if somebody walks into a cake shop and says, hey, I'd like a cake. And the baker, whoever owns it, says, are you gay or straight? Well, I'm gay. No, I'm not going to make you a cake. That is not what we're talking about here.
Right.
We're talking about the practice of a certain group, right? Whether that's gay, straight, black, white, whatever. You can't discriminate on someone based on their group outright. But if there's a certain practice within that group that and there's a creative aspect to it, you can discriminate. You have the right to refuse. That's what this case basically says. So, yeah, I thought that was very interesting. You walk into a donut shop, hey, I'd like a donut. Are you gay or straight? Because you can't tell if they're black or white or Asian or whatever.
Right.
Right? Are you gay or straight? Well, I'm gay. No, I'm not. You can't have a donut. Now, that's what the left is trying to say that this
Right.
is, but that's not what this is at all. And as Ben Shapiro put it, it's like, man, if they would have gone the other way with this, the power is unlimited. The power to make people do what they don't want to do in business is unlimited, man. Roger, you're in business. I mean, you could probably say it better than anything else. So anyway, I like that case too. The wedding website one, even though the the background behind it is a little is a little bit funny, but
Well, I mean,
I like that
the
ruling.
problem with it is the left, and I'll get into the actual case details here, but the right now the left is the only one that is presenting a narrative to the Supreme Court decision. And it's clear that none of these folks read it, or if they did read it, they are purposely misleading, right? It wasn't about
Same with the other ones.
yes, oh,
Same with
absolutely.
all the other ones.
It's never, the 303 creative versus Ellenus, and it's not about trans rights, LGBTQ plus rights, anything to do with that. And I think it was either Gorsuch or Kavanaugh that came back. It was about free speech. Okay, that's what it was, and that's why I was saying is you're talking about First Amendment versus 14th Amendment, right? So they're saying, well, hey, which one supersedes the other? Which one takes priority? So you have competing rights here, and at the end of the day, the First Amendment. There's a reason why it's the First Amendment, right? So and that's the way they ruled. And so a little background on this thing. This lady creates websites, or she was doing whatever. She wants to get into wedding websites. She's in Colorado, and she puts a statement on her website that, hey, I want to do these wedding websites, but I do not want to have customers that are, in the LGBTQ plus, category, something to that effect. And Colorado has, they actually have a state law, as do a lot of other states, that it's a public accusations law, which bars businesses that are open to the public from discrimination. So basically, they have a state law, which makes sense, that says, hey, if you operate, because you have to get licensed by the state, if you're going to operate within our state, you cannot violate other folks' rights by doing that. Okay. It's this could have like, dude, this is going to have second, third orders effect, because what should happen is it's going to make these states go back and actually refine some of these laws. It's like, hey, you can't violate somebody else's rights, but at the same time, conducting business for these folks also doesn't need to violate your own rights. And that's what she was arguing. Right now, the left is all up, one, you've got LGBTQ plus, rights that the narrative they're spinning, they're throwing out there. And then they're like, well, this was fake. Nobody even asked. Well, no, nobody asked, because it wasn't about that. Again, it's just like Russia, dude. They have created this little fictitious piece, and then they are spinning off, right? From that, which the basis is not correct. It's not accurate. The basis of this was that Colorado law was going to make her do that. That was what it was based on. And what I forget, again, it was either Gorsuch or Kavanaugh basically came back and said that no, her creating and designing a website is an extension of her First Amendment right, freedom of speech. Okay. And for that reason, the state of Colorado cannot come back and make her basically put down whatever wording that they find appropriate, that they approve of, on a website that she creates. So again, that becomes a very fine line, because I think it was the same state, right? Was it the same state with the baker, with the cake, or was that a different one?
Yes.
Okay. So it comes right after that, which he also won that as well. So again, where is that fine line at? It's when you talk about creativity, and you would know more about this than I do, especially being in the literary world. It's, what if I'm a woodworker? Can I argue that woodworker? And this is where I get a little, I like the ruling. I like the way it is. Again, I think it goes back and it makes folks refine. It's going to make the states refine what their state laws are on this. But how far does that go? How far does the First Amendment go? Like, what exactly does it cover? And we can't answer that here, and the Supreme Court won't answer it. And you'll go through a lot of other court cases or whatever. But okay, so if I'm a wood whittler, and to me, I create my own products. That's my expression of my thoughts, my ideas, whatever. Does that fall under the First Amendment? I'd say it probably does, right? But then you go to like what you're talking about with the cakes and the pastries, and then take it even farther than that. Is it signs? Is it hey, I'm into modding out vehicles? I mean, you can take this as far as you want to take it. It's like, hey, this is my own creativity. This is my own expression, right?
Well, on top of that, sorry to cut
No,
you
you're
off,
good.
but if it would have gone the other way, it was a matter of time before some far right Christian organization goes to a Muslim baker or a Muslim business and forces them to do something that, brother, they don't want to do. And we could talk about Jim Psaki later, but
That lady's complete trash. So anyway, that was probably my favorite case, just because a lot of, especially when it makes it to the Supreme Court, a lot of it is it's competing rights. And, and I don't know, and maybe you know this offhand. I don't know if because of the numerical order, if that's the way the Supreme Court looks at it. Hey, First Amendment's First Amendment. This is the 14th. I know it's not that cut and dry, but hey, obviously the First Amendment is the most important. So everything, and that gets down into where you talk about abortion rights and this and that, right? It's all of that. It's like, okay, a lot of that stuff. The 14th Amendment is the catch all. That's everybody's going to be, treated equally, across the board, up until the point that you violate somebody else's rights or one of the other amendments. And there really hasn't been very clear or defined point on, like, okay, these are the priority of rights. And that'll never happen. I mean, it's all going to be taken on a case by case basis. But I do see the, quote unquote slippery slope with this, because again, it goes back to the First Amendment, and how far does the First Amendment go? I mean, just off the top of your head, obviously, I think if you write books, right? If you were to write a book for somebody, I mean, that would fall into the same premise, I would imagine. If you're designing woodwork, fall under the same premise, signs. So I don't know. I mean, is there a line there that you say, okay, this is no longer First Amendment? You kind of do have to, because you do get to a point where, like you said earlier on, you do get to a point where you will discriminate. That is going to happen. But at what point does that violate, or my ability to not discriminate violates my First Amendment rights?
Well, it's where First Amendment rights and equal protection collide, right? That's where they collide. And I tend to side with the First Amendment. I tend to side. How do I say this? How do I say this? Um, I don't like anyone with the ability to force me to do something I don't want to do. Okay, that's where it's like, look, and we've talked about this on the podcast before, man. And it may be something we get shut down for and canceled for and all this stuff. But man, we live in a modern world, okay? And modern problems require modern solutions. But look, man, if a business, if there was a business in Lubbock that I frequented, I live near Lubbock, Texas, Amarillo, wherever, and they were like, you know what? We're not going to serve black patrons because we're racist. We don't like blacks. Period. Doesn't matter what kind. I'd be like, okay, well, I'm not freaking that business either.
Exactly.
And you can go to hell and you can go out of business.
Exactly.
You can do whatever the hell you want, but I'm not going to go to your business. And that's small business, right? We're in a modern world where there's giant corporations, and giant corporations, man, if they made a decision like that, man, they're going to reap the whirlwind too. So it's like,
Bud Light.
man, go ahead and be racist. Was it? Yeah, Bud Light. Go ahead and be racist. Go ahead and put your nonsense out there and let the market sort it out.
Exactly.
Let the market sort it out. Let me see your hate, because again, in the modern world with social media, I'm going to see that hate. And you know what? You're going to get canceled. You're going to get canceled by everyone who's conscious, who has a soul, right? It's just, I don't know. I tend to say I don't like anybody, coming in and telling me what I have to do and saying that the U.S. government is going to force me to do it if I don't want to do it. Man, F you.
Right.
That's where my mind is, and I know it's a little bit more complicated with that than that with the law, but I mean, that's my feeling. That something prickles up on my back when it's like, oh no, federal government's going to come in and force you to do what somebody told you to do that's against your personal belief system. Yeah, so with the student loan thing, folks, y'all listening, I really like the way Roger, especially, and not to shine Roger's dome any more than it already is, but I like the way that Roger and Josh also, say Biden versus Nebraska. That's a student loan decision, right? I just looked at an NPR site, and you guys listening and gals, the NPR site doesn't even say what the decision, the title of the decision, which is Biden versus Nebraska. They don't even say that. They just say 5 takeaways from the Supreme Court student loan relief. Y'all listen to this. Well, you got to realize how lucky you are to be listening to specifically Roger and Josh, because I never say Biden versus Nebraska, but even NPR doesn't say that stuff, right? I mean, you're more educated than your average NPR listener who's going to say every day of the week, I'm more educated than you. But So the Biden versus Nebraska, I think this one was a slam dunk. It was too easy. And Biden's already, like, as soon as that decision came through, he's like, okay, we're going to find another way around this. And like you said, Roger, earlier, you said this like 10 minutes ago or whatever it was. It's like all he's doing is pandering. That's all it is. Because if I owe $20,000 in debt and the federal government's like, hey, man, if you elect me, you might get this relief, or at least you don't have to pay on it for a little while. I mean, that one was a slam dunk. It's a slam dunk. I don't think there's much. I personally don't think there's much to say about it because he was exceeding his authorities.
Yeah,
Period.
and that's what the decision came down to. The decision came down to, again, it was Biden versus Nebraska and Department of Education versus Brown Supreme Court. Which it's funny you say that because so I pulled a lot of this info from SCOTUS blog, which I actually like the website, which came off Twitter because they didn't want to pay the $8 to. It's like, come on, dude, it's $8, but they didn't want to give money to the man, so whatever, fine. It's it's their money; they can do what they want, and like we talked about, they feel that their principles don't align with Elon Musk, so they don't pay the $8. So good on them. I still like the website, so I go to it. But what's interesting with SCOTUS blog is they don't list the case file up front. Like to me, a site like that would be like, okay, SCOTUS ruling, Biden v. Nebraska, Department of Education v. Brown, da 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 da. That's how they do it. They go into it, and now it is an opinion piece, so they go into the ruling, but you have to scroll to the bottom to the references and citations to find out the actual cases that are referenced in the Supreme Court ruling. That's a problem, at least in my eyes. So it was very straightforward. Again, another 6-3 vote. And at the end of the day, they didn't have the authority. Congress did not specifically give the Secretary of Education, Caldera, right, the authority to give borrowers such significant relief. Here's what's pretty cool. And I think Roberts actually wrote this. It's not whether the relief is warranted, but who has the authority to grant it. And what I like about this ruling and what the Supreme Court's doing is that is their way of saying, Congress, do your job. Now, all the pollings that I've seen out there show, and maybe Congress is doing their job right now because the pollings that I've seen, well, with this specifically, because the pollings that I've seen is that majority of Americans, for obvious reasons, don't support student loan, forgiveness, right? For again, you get a lot of working folks out there. You got a lot of folks that paid off their student loans. You haven't seen them a while, but the 3 to C3, they were on a budget for a while and to pay off, student loans there. And they took care of business and did what they were supposed to do. They were fiscally responsible. So, but it's not whether it's warranted, but who has the authority. So the Supreme Court, in my mind, they laid out, hey, we're not saying you can't do this. You just can't do it under the HEROES Act. So now they're trying to do it under the Higher Learning Pact or whatever it is. And, they're already getting beat up because everybody's like, well, hey, if that was the way to do it, then why didn't you just do that from the beginning? And they're like, and again, it's not matching up, right? Their responses and their actions aren't matching up with the actions they took because they're like, well, because we thought this was good. But if you knew this other one, because they came out and said, no, we're going to get it done under the, the Higher Learning Pact. Well, if you knew that was going to work, then why wouldn't you have just done that before? Let me tell you, this is why they wouldn't do that. Nobody in the administration wants to grant student loan forgiveness. Let's just put that out there up front. Nobody wants to do it. Like Luke said, they are pandering to the voters, right? They know 2024 is coming up. And oh, by the way, and I hope I'm saying this right, I think it's the Higher Learning Pact or something like that, right? But that's what they're trying to throw it under. And from what I have seen on the news, that will not get done before 2024. They're like, yeah, we can go through that process and that will take several years to go through. And so it puts it past the election. But again, they were quick to throw something out there because, hey, I know we didn't get it this time, but your $20,000 is going to be fine. And here's the thing. They're screwing these people because they're talking about delaying the start of the student loan payments for like another 6 months or something like that. But interest is going to accrue. Higher education package. Yeah, there you go. So yeah, you don't have to make payments today, but hey, guess what? Your interest isn't frozen. Your debt just continues to grow. And then when people talk about why I can't pay it down, you can't pay it down because you're not making any payments on it. Right? What's up?
So, Roger, I mean, if I don't want to get too personal with you, if you want to talk about it, it's okay. But you have specific experience with this.
Oh, absolutely.
Uh,
Absolutely.
and like to bring it back down from a wonky level to like a practical level, why this doesn't make sense to people like me, for instance, who and a lot of our listeners, man, it's not just me, but who worked our butts off to get our kids through school with benefits we earned, We earned.
Yeah.
We weren't given through military service, and not just that, but all the other bills. And I mean, thank God, stepson, Drew, man, good on him. He graduated. He's going to go to PT school. You know what? He's probably going to have student loans, but he's going to have to pay those off. But we worked really hard, and I just don't think it's right for my taxes to go toward paying off someone else's, debt who, didn't make those decisions. So with your experience that you had, like, give us a quick, like rundown, because, I think people would want to hear that. You don't have to get too specific, but, you actually, my understanding is y'all paid yours off.
Yeah, my wife had debt. One of the things early on was, and I was never a big college guy growing up. I just wanted to drink beer and chase women or whatever, whatever we all do at 18, 19, 20 years old, right? That's all I wanted to do. And fortunately, I did have a couple good leaders that were like, "Hey, man, you need to get your education." And we've talked about 1,000 times on here, guys, gals. Just because you have a degree doesn't mean diddly. Okay, what it does mean is that you complete a program of education or whatever it is, a program of instruction for 4 years, or 5 years, or 8 years, however long it takes you to do that, right? And the reality of it is this: you don't need a degree to be successful. You don't need a degree for every job. However, you do need a degree for some jobs. I want my heart surgeon to have a degree. I don't care if my plumber has a degree, right? So there is a very distinct line there. But in the Army, especially with the way the promotion systems and things like that work, you need a degree. It goes to promotion points, and the veterans out there understand that, but it's showing that you're better than yourself and whatever. So I went and got my degree. Fortunately, that was free. The Army, paid for. I say free. The Army paid for that. I obviously paid with my time, but my wife, we knew, man, hey, the Army, you can't work overtime. Well, you can work overtime, but you're not going to get paid for overtime, right? So you make what you make, and that's pretty static. I mean, that's it. There's no more, no less. And so we knew that if we wanted the finer things in life, that a lot of that really rested on my wife's shoulders and her earning potential. Just as a lot of service members out there, husbands or wives that are in the civilian sector. And so we knew for her to maximize her earning potential, she needed to get her bachelor's. She'd knocked that out. She went on to her MBA, knocked that out, and we incurred student. Dude, I made nothing, right? I was freaking sergeant in the Army at the time, so we incurred debt. And when it got close to where we started looking at that window for retirement, it's like, hey, we got to buckle down, and we need to take care of this, because I don't want this. Right? I hate owing anybody anything, like most of our listeners do. So we made a concerted effort, and hey, we cut some a lot of things out there that I wanted to do. Hey, I wanted to go travel the world, right? There's lots of that. Yeah, I'd like to drive a Ferrari. Not that student loans was going to pay for the Ferrari, but drive a nicer vehicle, get a nicer camper, live in a nicer home, this and that. But those are cuts that you have to make. On the other side of it, we've also beat it into our kids. So fortunately, with my son and daughter, the Army's taking care of a lot of their college, but my daughter, much like your boy, yeah, her bachelor's was taken care of. Well, for her, it was a little bit different. She ended up getting scholarships and covering the rest of her bachelor's, and then used my GI Bill to cover the rest of her master's degree to be a physician assistant. So again, there is a lot of blood, sweat, tears, and sacrifice that go into this stuff. And she calls me every weekend, and I know she listens now because she's got a commute. So I'll tell you a little story. She going into it, we told her, hey, this is how much money you got to save. And she worked like 3 or 4 jobs simultaneously, and was a part of the student clubs on campus, because you had to have that, and going to school full time. And we knew that she had to have a dollar amount, because it's like, hey, I'll cover your bachelor's, but anything after that, that's kind of on you. So you know what? She worked her ass off, had money saved up. She had money for her living expenses, and then she had like play money. And then she went to the grocery store. She's probably gonna hate me for doing this, but she went to the grocery store to buy like 2 bags of ramen, and out of her play account went to go swipe the card, and she's down to her last year. She's under a year left, right? Swiped it, declined. And it was like, oh shit. And you could see it, like tears coming from her eyes. Like, I guess I'll put back this bag of ramen. But that's what we do, right? That's what we do. That's called fiscal responsibility. I'm not going to put it on a credit card. And my first response was, I gave her a credit card, in case shit happens. Like, hey, don't be, if you're broke down the side of the road, this and that, just hey, use the credit card, do what we got to do. Let's get you home safe, or if you're out of food, or the air conditioning goes out, or whatever. I was like, babe, why don't you just use the credit card? It's like, it's not that big of a deal. And that's coming from the parent side. But from the daughter side, it's like, well, no, we knew where I was going to be. I knew I have to be fiscally responsible, and I should have known what was in the account, yada, yada, yada. Point being to all this, as I bore everybody with my life story, is we have beat that fiscal responsibility into her head, and she is going to incur as little debt as possible to get to her next level. There are things that she is foregoing today that her friends wanted to go to Padre Island, and her other friend wants to go to Paris, and her other friend wants to, and she's like, I will have time to do that because, life, man, hopefully for most of us, life is a marathon, right? It's not the sprint. It's not that, we're not Usain Bolt with the, 100-meter dash. And so she's looking at, hey, I may not finish first in this 100-meter dash, but I'm damn sure going to finish in that top 5% in the marathon. And we really, really beat that into our kids with, it's not necessarily about today. It's about the longer story, right?
Absolutely, man. And you kind of skipped over that. I was hoping you'd talk about more of the pain and suffering y'all went through to pay off your wife's
Dude,
student loans. But y'all,
I'm going through
yeah,
pain and suffering now, helping her out, my daughter, because we don't want her to suffer.
yeah.
Like the focus is just like with you guys, it's my kids, my daughter needs to graduate, and that's what I need her to focus on. Right.
Well, and that's the thing is that you never get it right the first time, right? And I'm not talking about us necessarily as parents, although you do learn as you go. Uh, but your parents, their parents, your grandparents and the great grandparents and stuff like that. What we're talking about, Roger says it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. What I'd like to say is, man, it's a generational marathon, is what it is. My parents learned from what their parents didn't know about college and stuff like
Yep.
that. They didn't know what to tell them. They had no idea. College back then was just in the 60s and 60s was just like, oh, well, they didn't know. My parents kind of didn't know a little bit, but they put us on the right track, right? Everyone makes mistakes. I've made mistakes with my kids in college and all that stuff. My parents made mistakes too. So I know my parents listen. I'm not saying they made mistakes. They did everything right. But I learned from the stuff that they didn't know at the time. My kids are going to learn. I already have. They already have of the stuff that I didn't know. And it's a generational marathon, man. People talk about building generational wealth, man. It is a marathon. Maybe their great grandkids will be in a position where they don't got to worry about nothing. They're in the C suite starting right out. It's just, dude, I love that story, man. I like listening to that. You worked your way out of it. I just wish more people were like that. I want to chalk it up to entitlement. I deserve to go to South Padre, but it is what it is. So, speaking of college, right? So I've got it right here. Students for Fair Admissions Incorporated versus President and Fellows of Harvard College. This is the last one,
Yep.
right? And this one, this one was probably uh, more misunderstood than almost all of them, I would say. And if you read through that thing, and first of all, good, my computer's going crazy here. Whoa, I think the Russians have control of my computer here, which I do want to
That
talk
or
about
YouTube.
Russia and Ukraine.
They're just going to
Yeah.
go ahead and edit for you
So
as we record.
what I do like about this is just the title of the case: Students for Fair Admissions Incorporated versus whatever. That's a student organization, man, who organized and granted it's Harvard. I think UNC
Yeah,
was
they're
involved in
the other
that too.
defendant.
So rich kids, but I do like the fact that these college kids, with probably the help of a lot of help from the alums, put this together. Went all the way to the Supreme Court, man. I'm happy for those kids, man. That's good. It's good for them. But man, I'm telling you, man, the left, Roger, dude, you being Asian as you are,
Hey, I was one of the
the
ones
left.
discriminated against. I should have been on this thing.
Nice. The left really showed their racism with this thing. Some of the posts I saw on Twitter were absolutely vile. They were awful. I mean, just calling out this poor. I should have pulled
Do
up
you
the
see the
tweet
you talking about
where
the
this
Erica
eight.
Marsh thing? Which
Yes,
she's not even
that
real.
was.
You see the dude was tracking her down.
Oh, really?
So
No, I didn't
yeah, I
see
don't want
that.
to cut into your story too much, but Erica Marsh,
No, no, no. Go ahead. Go
she
ahead.
basically tweets that without affirmative action, how are black people going to be successful? Okay, that's basically what she said. So then everybody's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You're saying no, no blacks, no minorities can be successful without affirmative action. So a guy that we follow on Twitter, I have to pull the account for you. He's basically like, and it's pretty good. When she makes that statement, he comes out and he's a black guy. God, name escapes me, but He comes out and says, "I'm going to make you cry and I'm going to make you leave Twitter." And he says this like the day prior, right? And I was like, now that's a pretty bold statement. A lot of us talk a lot of yang, me and Luke and Josh or whatever, but he basically comes out there. He's got hundreds of thousands of followers or whatever, and it's like, I'm going to make you leave this platform. And him and his team or whoever, they go do a lot of due diligence and realize that that chick's not even real, man. It's some like fake profile that's like some European dude that's super progressive or whatever created it. I don't know the ties to the Democratic Party, but basically they're paid as an influencer, and they have all these hundred thousands of followers. That way they can comment, and not just comment, but create the narrative for government policies and procedures and regulations, right? And that kind of, I'll kick it back to you before I go down that train of thought, because it's a totally different track.
So yeah, I know the one you were talking about. I was actually thinking of another one. I finally found I had to scroll through our Twitter a little bit, but it's a post call from an individual who's verified named Yatin Chu, and it's a picture of her family, and it says, "I told my daughter that today is a big day." She's talking about the Supreme Court. There, it's a picture of them in front of the Supreme Court, and I told my daughter today is a big day. They've ended affirmative action. Isn't this what you've been fighting for? She asked. I said yes. And then Soledad O'Brien. Y'all remember Soledad O'Brien? God, did
Oh
you see
Lord,
this
yeah, I
post?
did see that post.
God, she says, congrats on this is an Asian family. Okay, this is an Asian family, multi-generational in this picture. I mean, a minority, right? Soledad O'Brien, who is also a minority, eye roll, massive eye roll. Congrats on screwing over other people of color, ma'am, particularly those whose efforts in civil rights paved the way for you and your family to come to America. Wow. Dude, that could be the most blatantly racist shit
Oh yeah.
I've seen on Twitter in quite a while. And people are like, oh man, if you let Twitter loose, you're going to see all this racist stuff. It's like Soledad O'Brien is posting this stuff about Asians, a clear minority. You know what, Roger? It boils down to this, dude. I'm gonna say it, dude. Asians, especially second generation, and I know we're at the point now where we're getting third and fourth, but that stuff has lasted since the second. Hard workers, man.
Sure.
I mean, they are. I would equate it to like second generation Jews back in
Oh yeah.
the 50s, 60s, and earlier than that. It's like, man, you have to work 5 times as hard as everyone else to get a leg up. And man, these, I hate to paint everything with a broad brush. So I'm talking about like second, third generation whose parents came from, the motherland or whatever. Those kids are working. They're working, and they're working harder than anyone else. Therefore, their grades are higher. Not all of them, but they were the ones getting the scholarships to Harvard, which
Yeah.
is a crap school. We need to change the paradigm on that. Harvard is a crap school.
Oh yeah.
If you hear that someone went to Harvard, except for DeSantis, he's the man. No, I'm
Josh is like,
joking.
hey.
But again, it's just like they simply work harder. It's in the culture, and that may sound racist or whatever, but dude, I challenge anyone to fight me on that. It's like, and people were upset about it. There were too many Asians getting into the top schools because their scores were higher. Their it's not just about scores and grades anymore, dude. It's not, and that's in the Asian community. The way I understand it, the same with the Jewish community back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. It wasn't just about, oh, you're going to make perfect grades. Yeah, you're going to make perfect grades. You're also going to learn the violin. You're
Right.
going to learn the piano. You're going to go to your own ethnic school. You're going to know both languages, and you're also going to do, drama, debate team, all this stuff. I mean, simple fact is, Roger, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, maybe you have a different perspective because I'm talking about your race. But it's simply, I think that there were too many getting in, and it was like, no, we need to do something about this and get other folks in. And what really was the big thing is AOC got on this train and all this stuff. They were like, well, this is about legacy admissions. Yeah, no. So your thoughts on that?
I do want to start with the legacy admissions, because on the surface, dude, I couldn't care less. Like, I get it, whatever. What I will say though is that's tied to a lot of money, a lot of funding. So you know what? There's going to be a lot of yang out there spewed, on social media and the internet and news and what have you. But at the end of the day, when you got the great grandfather whose grandfather went to Harvard or Yale or whatever school it is, it doesn't even have to be one of the Ivy League schools. And you've got the grandfather that put, their kid through, and the kid, such and so forth. You get 3, 4, 5 generations. That's why a lot of these libraries and the gymnasiums are named after people, right? These are people that attended that school, alumni, went out, made hundreds of millions of dollars, and they come back and they donate and they, do a lot of charitable stuff. So I don't think you see the legacy stuff go anywhere. Again, I couldn't
Well,
care less because
that's
I'm not legacy.
that's where the endowments come from.
Yeah. Yes.
You look at the endowments. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, at the end of the day, well, one, you hit it right on the head because I forget the title of it, but with the Asians specifically with Harvard, and we'll have to go back and Google this. It was like a personal characterization score that they were giving. So you would have, the student, straight A's, they, have high SATs, all the academic stuff. Like you said, played the violin. They were, part of their Lions Club or whatever the heck it was, all the extracurricular activity stuff, donated to charity, volunteered their time, worked in soup kitchens, whatever. And like, wait a minute, we're having too many Asians join. So we're going to do this interview and all of those other things that you did that are very objective, right? That gives you a score. Well, I'm going to give you like a personal characterization score. And oh, by the way, that's going to weigh like 60% of your admission score to come in here. So they would do this interview with them and they just be like, yeah, you just scored a 14 out of 100, man. Sorry. And they're like, wait a minute, I've got all this other stuff. What are you talking about? It's like, yeah, I just didn't like you. And that's what it came down to. And at the end of the day, this is what I want. And I think we're there now. Again, different times in the 50s and the 40s, and even in the 60s, even after the passage of the Civil Rights Act. I get it. I get all that. I think we're beyond a lot of that stuff now. At the end of the day, I just want it to be merit based. Be merit based, and however it shakes out, it shakes out. But part of the other problem is now we're not even talking about like regular state schools or whatever. I mean, believe me, I couldn't get into Harvard with or without the discrimination. Okay. Wasn't going to happen. But now it's like, well, every American deserves to go to Harvard, or I guess every minority. Well, every minority except for Asians because they're not socioeconomic minorities, which, oh, by the way, falls in the business side of the house. But anyway, that's another topic. All African Americans, need to be able to go to Harvard, Yale, or Princeton. Why? Not every white guy, gal can go. Not every Asian can go. Not every Indian can go. Whatever happened to like state schools, whatever happened to just like, well, hey, we just want to make sure that everybody's got the same opportunity to go to college, which I think we can say that everybody does. Now, there are different, different challenges in life and there's a financial piece to it. But at the end of the day, I just want it to be based on merit. And I think when you look at student loans, when you look at scholarships and this and that, and there's a ton of money out there, man, when it comes to scholarships and that type of stuff. And at the end of the day, you've also got to work your ass off. Specifically, on the ruling. So we talked about Students for Fair Admissions Inc. versus President Fellows of Harvard College and University of North Carolina. They basically came out and said they cannot use race as the deciding factor, but they can, and I think they were actually referring to the students and maybe some type of admissions process, use race to describe how it has impacted a student's life that would provide a concrete, that's a very interesting word that they threw in there, that would provide a concrete impact to the school. So what that means is, Luke, you're white, you can't come here. Okay, that's illegal. But you can describe your challenges and maybe, part of your character through the challenges that you had growing up as a white kid, as a black kid, as an Asian kid, or whatever that makes you who you are. And this is what I'm bringing to the school. The interesting piece of that is, and I'll throw this back at you, is concrete impact to the school. That tells me that it is something that is quantifiable, right? Something that it's objective and quantifiable.
Yeah, and that completely, just based on the society we live in now, as a white person, a white male, okay, yeah, try describing. I challenge anyone to do this. I may try on my own. Try describing as a white male in today's society how you're going to have a positive impact on the due to the fact you're a white male. So automatically, that's a no go, because there is nothing in today's society. There is nothing, today's culture, I should say. There is nothing you can say on paper as a white without sounding like a white supremacist in today's culture. As a white male, I can bring this. No, dude, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
And
So that's
you're
a
automatically put at a disadvantage because,
yeah,
let's say your parents,
100%.
we all come from working families, but something you didn't have anything to do with, your parents were successful financially and did whatever. So you should be punished for that. And that's what these colleges are saying. We're going to hold that against you, even though you had nothing to do with it. We're going to hold your parents' success and wealth against you and your admissions to our institution.
Yeah, I guess there is a possible way you could do it, but the only way you could do it is by self-deprecating. Like, as a white person, I went to school in this neighborhood or this school district that was predominantly Hispanic or predominantly black, and I learned this. And so, that's the only way you could do it. That the way I see it. But what I read I listened to a few of the dissents, and the dissents were all from Kagan, Sotomayor, and KBJ. And I can say this for a fact. Kagan is definitely the least stupid justice between her, Sotomayor, and KBJ because Kagan actually tried to argue law. Sotomayor and KBJ, it was dumb.
Oh yeah.
The stuff they were saying was just culture, woke, culture warrior BS. It was nonsense, dude. It was complete nonsense. So let's move on, dude, because we're an hour in. Can you believe
I
that?
know, it's
Every
nuts.
time there's two of us recording, we're like, and I told my brother-in-law and his brother this. Anytime there's two of us, we're like, man, this is gonna be 45 minutes. We don't have enough to say.
Yeah.
It's 2 hours later. We're like,
I
holy
was looking at
crap,
their
it's been
first
two
case. We're
hours.
like, we're already 20 minutes. I do want to throw one thing out to close this out, and then I'll kick it back to you.
All right.
There is another method to paying off your student loans, right? Or getting student loan forgiveness. And it's studentaid.gov, to where you do community service, you serve in underserved areas, and they will forgive some of your loans. I know California, I think I had a buddy that um, his wife, they put her through state college to come out as a teacher, but she had to do 5 years as a teacher in a low income school district or something like that. And they basically covered her college. What's interesting is that was brought up the other day, and I went to the website. I've got it saved on here, Federal Student Aid, and that's where they list all the stuff as far as loan forgiveness and things that you can do or whatever. Yeah, that website is now down. It is actually down. And I'm saying it's down because of the traffic, because I think there are a lot of people that finally woke up like, wow, these student loans aren't going anywhere. Interest rates or interest is going to start to accumulate here, I think in August. So I need to figure something out. So who knows, man? Maybe it's a turn for the good, and we get a lot of folks that are, that go out there and participate in the underserved portions of our society and do some good.
Yeah, for those of you out there listening, there's maybe a few of y'all. Most of I think Diego, our listener, I think he still listens from time to time. Have kids, and then he and I have actually talked about this. I think Jesse, he listens. Jesse doesn't listen out of spite because he thinks he's smarter than me, and he is. But it's like, dude, if you want to start a podcast, go start a podcast. But these folks have kids that are eighth grade, maybe starting high school. And if you find yourself in that position where your kids are in middle school, especially elementary school, brothers and sisters, it's never too early to start. I can put it to you that way. It's never too early to start. Your kids aren't going to care, but you're gonna have to take the Asian model on this one because their grades are not enough. Put it to you that way. It's, so I want to give a shout out just to wrap this one up because I said, we all learn it's a generational marathon and stuff like that. I never give a shout out like I should to Kurt and Russell, man. They listen all the time, and I really do appreciate. I never know what to say when they're like, "Hey, listen to your last episode." I'm almost embarrassed,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Sorry, it was so bad," But yeah, both of them are like Russell has twins
Oh
who
Lord.
are in college right now. Now, I imagine like if I would have had twins back in the day, as soon as you have twins, you're like the ultrasound is twins. I would have thought of college. I'd be like, oh my god, I'm going to have to pay for
Oh,
two
well, that's
of
the point, though. That's the point. That's what we like.
them.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to have multiple 529 accounts.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But Russell and his wife are they're intelligent people, and they've thought it through, and they're putting their kids through. And same with Kurt. Man, his kids are just great. They've made their way. His youngest is right on his way, man, and that's what I mean by like that generational marathon. You know, uh, Kurt and my sister, they've learned their lessons, as have I, along the way, and they've passed those on to their kids. And their youngest right now is just set up in a perfect situation. He's going to be great. So yeah, shout out to them, man. I never do that. I never shout out to people who are true faithful listeners, and I apologize for that. So Roger, I'm gonna give you a pick here because I wrote down a few things, and we can talk about whichever one you want. So one, you just take your pick. One is July 4th has become a controversial holiday now. It's like, I guess that happened within the past 5 years. The Ukraine nuclear plant, cocaine in the White House. That's a good one. The Philadelphia shootings or shooting, but it's probably shootings, but the big one that made the news. And then Facebook threads that's going to compete with Twitter. As we saw with the metaverse, Zuckerberg's last big thing. I hope that Facebook Threads goes the way of the metaverse. So again, July 4th becoming a controversial holiday. Ukraine nuclear plant, cocaine in the White House, the Philadelphia shooting, and the Facebook Threads. What do you want to talk about?
So I would choose cocaine in the White House, but I have a curveball. Can I throw a different topic out there?
Yeah,
How
man.
about the IRS whistleblower?
Ooh, yeah.
I
Yeah, what's up
so
with that?
let me read this to you first, and then I'll get your thoughts on it. And it's short, so it shouldn't take up the next hour. We say that, but and they've obviously, I think they've got two transcripts out there now on two whistleblowers, and the last that I heard, they're now multiples. They're talking about 3, 4, 5 whistleblowers. And this is just a quick quote. This recommended felony tax evasion charges, that's 7201 is tax evasion. 7206, parentheses 1 is a false tax return, also a felony for the tax years 2014, 18, and 19. And for Title 26, 7203, which is a failure to file or pay, that is a misdemeanor charge for 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19, Shapley said. He's one of the whistleblowers, Gary Shapley. Testimony we have just released details a lack of U.S. attorney independence, recurring unjustified delays, unusual actions outside the normal course of any investigation, Chairman Jason Smith told reporters, because some of this stuff, the statute of limitations is passed. I think it's 3 years for error, and it's like 7 years, right, for conspiracy or fraud or what have you. Testimony shows that U.S. Attorney of Delaware David Weiss tried to bring charges in the District of Columbia around March of 2022 and was denied. Weiss sought special counsel status from the Justice Department in the spring of 2022 and was once again denied. Weiss sought to bring charges in the Central District of California in the fall of 2022 and had that request denied in January of 2023. So the big thing here is that Weiss has said, and the DOJ has said that, well, no, it's all been up to Weiss. It's all been up to him and his choice, his decision to move forward with prosecuting in this stuff. And we're talking about Hunter Biden here. Okay. These whistleblowers have come out. Now, I don't know these guys from anybody else. And all I know is what, the news reports to us, right? What we see on Fox, CNN, MSNBC, or whatever. But this is actually starting to gain traction it was last week before the 4th of July, but it's starting to gain traction on the left side of the mainstream media. And any one of us, okay, because Hunter's going to get a sweetheart deal unless the judge just says, no, it's not going to happen. For all of this stuff and the gun charge, it's basically just going to get all wrapped up to a misdemeanor, no time served. Any of us that would have any of this stuff, right, we'd be in prison. We would be in prison. And this whistleblower, from what I have seen, again on Fox News, when he came out and did the interview and with the transcripts, dude, he's got emails. I mean, he's like, no, I asked this. I thought it was odd, so I clarified it. I wanted to ask it again, and then I fired off an email that day. So this is not some 3, 4, the DOJ and Hunter Biden, well, I shouldn't say DOJ, Hunter Biden's attorneys have come out and said, they're just disgruntled attorney or disgruntled employees that are pissed at the way the legal system has turned out. And these folks, from what I can tell here, man, there are several emails that go back several years where they're like, this is a problem. This is not how we would handle everything else. Specifically when they looked at the laptop, with Hunter Biden's laptop, because there were some other crimes in there. And allegedly the FBI said, you can't look at that. They had already authenticated it and said, yeah, you can't use any of that stuff. And there were several other items there that were going to, allege that he did other crimes, committed other crimes. And the FBI/and or the DOJ said, yeah, that's closed off. That's beyond your purview. And from these whistleblowers, they're like, no, it's actually not. I mean, we're talking about tax fraud, we're talking about tax evasion, going back to Hunter's child support case, right? Oh, I don't make that much money. Well, you know what? You've got, I mean, how many years was that I just listed off? You've got 14, 18, 19. So 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. 6 years. I would like to go 6 years without paying taxes. So, when they talk about the two-tier justice system, you're seeing it work here. And I think unfortunately, here's what's going to happen. Nothing's going to happen. At the end of the day, nothing's going to happen because you need the DOJ to prosecute. DOJ under the Biden administration, they're not going to do anything with it. And unfortunately, the GOP, they're just too stupid that, they're going to have their hearings on C-SPAN and nobody watches C-SPAN. And they are not smart enough to craft a public message or a narrative to get out there to really come after this family. And, when you hear about all the stuff tied in with the big guy and the 10% and this and that, dude, it's all a big nothing burger. And I'm not saying because there's nothing there, but the GOP won't do anything about it. So, no, what are your thoughts on the sweetheart deal that Hunter's getting there?
Black pilled, man. Very black pilled. Listen to what you read. Multiple requests, all denied. Who denied that? And having worked I'm unemployed this week, folks, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Congratulations, by the way. Independence
Thanks,
Day, baby.
That's right. Yeah. So having worked for the federal government for 26 years, I can tell you, I wrote that down. I actually wrote it, and I think I broke through the page because as Roger was talking, I was getting very upset. I don't know if y'all watching YouTube could see, as long as this isn't taken down, if you can see how upset I'm getting. I wrote, who denied it? And I started thinking about it, and I was like, well, that's just the way the system works. Their supervisor denied it because it's like they maybe don't want to touch it. I don't think it's a huge conspiracy. I just think it's the federal government. Uh, Now, at the top level, where they're like, don't ask about the big guy, don't ask about the 10%, that is a conspiracy. 100%. That's crooked. But yeah, Roger, it's a nothing burger. Like you said, nothing's going to happen. And it's a two-tiered system of justice. It makes yeah, I think Kodak Black, the rapper, went to jail for less. I think
Yeah.
2, 3, 4 years or something like that for less, and somebody else too. I can't remember the name. For less than what Hunter did. Uh, it, it's very frustrating. It's hard not to yell and scream. It's hard to keep my thoughts straight. I get so frustrated and so black pilled. Uh, Again, look, man. You know, I'm fortunately at a place where, at the end of the year, you get that tax bill and it's like, holy crap, I can't pay all of this at one time. I can't pay all of it one time, so I'm going to have to, pay it out. You get on a payment plan. I make my payments, and it sucks.
Yeah.
It actually, you know what? The IRS is actually pretty cool about that because this last, I'm probably revealing too much tax information about myself. But this last year, I ended up, I didn't owe as much. It was, less than $200, and I called up the IRS, and believe it or not, after about 20 minutes, I actually talked to a human being. It was a female, and I said, "Hey, I want to pay this off." They're like, "Well, it's too late. It's already been rolled up into what you're already paying." I was like, "What the fuck?" I was like, "Okay," but I was like something like 2 days late. It's supposed to be paid on the 15th. I was 2 days late because I didn't know how to pay it. Right?
Right.
You can't go to the IRS website and figure that shit out. It's just like it's antiquated. It's like DTS. And but she was cool. She's like, well, yeah, it's cool. It's all right. It's all good. And it's all paid off now. But it was like, again, if I didn't make my payments, believe me, if Luke didn't make his payments for 90 days, oh, there'd be something going on. And that's me who files taxes. I file my taxes. I bite my tongue and I hold down the vomit filing my taxes because I finally made it to a point where is years ago, where I'm not filing a 1040 EZ like Josh has always said. Too many of you people have never filed anything, other than a 1040 EZ, and it shows. And it's just, it sucks, man. It really sucks. The common man out here knowing that you can spend serious jail time, but the president's son, by virtue of the fact he's the president's son, it's frustrating, dude. And I think this, you probably have more to say on that, and we can roll that into it. But cocaine at the White House, it's just like, and this is for Michael because Michael listens to. He's a faithful listener. You remember I texted you guys. I texted you guys on I think it was Friday or Saturday because I'm monitoring. I'm looking at Twitter hazmat incident near the White House,
Yeah.
near at the White House.
Yeah, I remember seeing that.
And I was like, well,
Hazmat.
what's this? What's this? And so there's a hazmat incident, and it just disappears. So every time something disappears from the news like that, that's when my radar goes up. Quick story, and then it disappears. It's like, okay, there's something bigger going on here. and then it disappears for a few days, and during that time it disappeared, there was some individual who blew up like 3 businesses in the DC area, just planted explosives at random businesses and blew them up. And it totally distracted from the hazmat incident, at least in my mind. I texted you guys that too. I was like, man, look, check this out. Isn't this crazy? It's kind of weird. And then, my conspiracy mind goes to work, and I'm like, well, what the hell? And then today or yesterday, I think it was yesterday, it comes out, oh, well, it was cocaine hydrochloride that they found in the White House. And I'm like, well, imagine that. What's the mystery here? Hunter Biden went to Camp David the day before it was found with Joe Biden, or he was there in the White House that day. It's like, dude, I mean, I'm no genius or anything. I'm no Sherlock Holmes, but whose cocaine was that? I mean, the White House is probably the most monitored building in the United States. Somebody put that cocaine there. Somebody left that there, and they're like, oh, it was in a tourist area. It's like, oh, in a tourist area, you say? Yeah, I don't think so. And then there's been multiple accounts of where it was found. It's like, dude, come on. Come on.
Yeah, dude.
Who left it there? I mean, this is too easy. It's right there in front of all our faces.
You'll never hear anything else from it, though. Yeah, I mean, that's
no,
KJP and all them. They've just written
not.
it off. And this is where the media is complicit, because here's the thing, going back to the explosions, I think it's more, I mean, because obviously events like that happen all the time. I mean, they do. It's like the train derailments. When everybody got on the train derailment thing, and we pulled out the numbers like, hey, actually like 1,200 of these happen a year or whatever the heck it was. Stuff like that happens. What the press pool does and what KJP does and her and that department as press secretary, I'm convinced, and I have no inside knowledge on this, but they need to get the news off the cocaine found in the White House. So they go out to the press pool and say, hey, we need to find something else. Or they probably actually find the story themselves. And they come and say, hey, here's what you guys are running with. And you see it. You see when Fox News does the little, the montage or whatever, they put all the CNN, MSNBC, they're all saying the same thing over and over and over again. Okay, that's clearly orchestrated, right? And so that's what's happening. It's, hey, take your eye off the ball. Don't worry about what's happening over here. Look at this. I don't go so far to say they set that up, but that is the piece of news they are going to bring to the surface to have everybody concentrate on. And, I blame the media for this. I blame the press pool for it because they're complicit. There is no pushback. She is the worst. I thought Jen Psaki was bad. KJP is the worst press secretary that I can remember in recent history.
Far worse.
Because she's not even she is dumb as a box of rocks. But the problem is the media does not hold her accountable. Every now and then you get somebody gives a little bit of pushback. But see, here's the problem. They're all scared to have their credentials removed. Remember Acosta when Trump kicked him out? Oh, the uproar, right? They are all scared to lose their access. And so they pitch softballs. They may give something a little bit of pushback. She's like, I'm not talking about that anymore. I've already given you my answer. And then that's it. They stop. And that's what pisses me off. There's no accountability for it. And when you look at the cocaine, it's funny because Josh tweeted like immediately. He's like, "Where's Hunter?" And you talked about satire. You said it years ago. Satire is dead because you can't even make this stuff up anymore. When the report first came out, they said it was in the library, and immediately, right, the left came out and said, "Well, hey, there are a lot of scholars that come in and out of the library, archivists, da 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 da. NARA sets a lot of that stuff up." So you're like, okay, if it's in the library, whatever. Well, then it wasn't in the library. It was in the West Wing. And then it just wasn't in the West Wing. It was actually in the West Wing, found in a locker. And so when you look at, visiting the White House, going to the White House, and I've done the tour, at least back in the day, man, they're pretty daggum thorough, right? So who would have access to those areas without having to go through some type of security search? Obviously, somebody on the inside. And there's only one crackhead that I know of in the White House right now. I mean, hey, dude, call it what it is, allegations, whatever. But there's only one that I know that's in the White House that would have that type of access, right? And that type of placement. And it's Hunter.
Let me tell you what this is. Folks, listen. And this is one of the truest things you'll ever hear. Roger, Josh, and I were like Cassandra. I think we talked about Cassandra, the old Greek myth, where she's always out there, saying this is going to happen. This is going. No one ever listens to her, right? I think our audience does, because I think what Kurt. I'm giving Kurt another shout out. He said, "Man, these guys are right on so much stuff." That's a lot come from Kurt, because all he likes to do is cut me down. But look, let me tell y'all what this was. This powder hazmat incident at the White House. This was a U.S. Secret Service cry for help. That's what this is. I mean, U.S. Secret Service, as much as I bag on the federal government, there are true believers out there. I was one of them for a very long time. It's like, bro, if the shit really goes down, you want me in there because I'm on your side. There are people in the Secret Service who are on our side. Okay? They see what's going on. Imagine being in the Secret Service when JFK was in. Man, wouldn't that have been fun, right? But these people see this and they're like, this is not right. This is not right. The next time we see something like this, uniformed or not, we're going to make a deal out of it. And that's what they did. They did that. I guarantee you they saw that and they're like, oh, no. This is too far. That crackhead jackass is putting all of us at risk. So we're going to make this a story. And they did their best. I'm telling y'all, I am 100%, not 99%. I'm 100% convinced that's what this was. They're tired of covering for it. They're done. They're done with this, dude. I'm telling you. And so, okay, Roger, I'm going to ask you this. So the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, how long, off the top of your dome, how long did that take for the U.S. intelligence services to determine that, well, yeah, it wasn't the Russians that did it, number one. And number two, how long did it take, and by the way, we're transitioning to the Ukraine nuclear power plant now. How long did it take for the U.S. intelligence services and the media to determine that, you know what, it was probably leaked from a virus research center located in a very large Eastern Asian country? Try not to get banned here. How long did that take? How long did both of those take?
Well, I would say the leak was a little bit longer than the report that came out on the failed Afghanistan withdrawal, over a year later. So I guess that would be the timeline, right? The leak, the failed Afghanistan withdrawal that came out, before, the holiday weekend, and then the Nord Stream 2, which we called dude, did we even wait like 24 hours before we called that? It wasn't even 24 hours.
No, it was quick. So transitioning to that, I'm going to try to say this right. It's the largest nuclear power plant, so they say. I'm not sure. The Zaporizhia nuclear power plant in Ukraine, which is controlled by the Russians right now. And the thing is still running. Russians aren't that stupid. They're like, okay, you engineers can still come to work. You can still keep this thing running. We don't need another documentary about this like Chernobyl. So basically, it boils down to this. I think a few of our listeners were commenting on the Slack channel about they were saying, I really don't like what I'm seeing coming out of Ukraine right now, which was Zelensky came on and said, and I don't know if this was before or after the Russians said their thing, but Zelensky came on and said, the Russians are planning on sabotaging this nuclear plant that they already control and blaming it on us. And the Russians said, the Ukrainians are going to bomb this place and they're going to blame it on us. So this goes back to the questions I just asked Roger.
They're both right.
So, let's say, yeah, there are no good guys in this battle, like in this war, like Josh and I and you always say. So let's say the thing is bombed, right? It is bombed, it blows up, and there's a meltdown. It's going to be at least a year before we know who did it. Yeah? So would it be wise to make any rash decisions after that thing is bombed on NATO and the US's part? my point is, we're in a quandary right now where information is traveling very fast, and conversely, the truth is traveling very slow. So, Roger, I mean, I guess I want to ask your predictions on what might happen and your thoughts on the entire situation, which is so messed up.
I look at it when I kind of now, everybody will be like, oh, he's a Putin sympathizer, he's a Russian sympathizer, whatever. I kind of look at it like when a foreign dignitary visits your country, right? The worst thing that you can have happen is to have a foreign dignitary, a foreign world leader die in your country. So, even if it's an enemy, if you have like Xi Jinping from China, like the worst thing that you could have happen would be for him to come to US soil and for him to be assassinated, or a terrorist event, or whatever happens and it ends up killing him. That would be the worst thing. And that light, you provide him the same protection that you would provide our own president of the United States, because that would lead to nuclear war. Uh, I'd like to believe, or I shouldn't say I like to believe. I think what happens in this with Ukraine and Russia, Russia knows if this thing blows up, like there is no good PR for them, regardless of who's at fault, right? Whether they do it, whether Ukraine does it, or whatever. I mean, the world is going to blame them. The media's coming, even if it's not their fault. The world's going to come out. So I almost think that Russia treats this as a foreign dignitary visit. We're like, hey, they're going to have to do everything they can to protect this nuclear power plant.
So real quick, I mean, you went to the Sergeant Major's Academy.
Oh Lord.
If you're controlling, if you're controlling enemy territory, right? You're invading a country, and you're taking over their. This goes to your point you just said. You're taking over their critical infrastructure, which the largest nuclear power plant, which probably supplies power well, let's see, well northwest
It's the largest one in
of
Europe, right?
the Fort. Yeah, that controls the power well northwest of the forward line of troops, which the Russians are southeast of that. Don't you want to control that and keep that running?
Absolutely.
Because doesn't that give you just a little bit more leverage? It's critical infrastructure, it's power. You want to control it. Why in the name of F would you ever want to blow that up? To even create, it's like you said, there is no positive to that.
Right. And it's not surgical enough, right? If you were cutting off, power strictly to Ukraine or whatever, and because there's obviously a lot of resources that are used in war and whatever. And it's not surgical enough where you're just directly impacting them without probably impacting themselves, is my opinion. Ukraine jumped all over this, again, my opinion, because the buzzword right now is nuke, right? That's the existential threat. Nukes, 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 because everybody knows 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl. We dropped 2 bombs, Pearl Harbor. World War II. So that's the buzzword, and that's how you get it out there. And you've already had the IAEA come out and talk. You've already had the UN talk about it, and the IAEA, dude, I like their guidance. Well, our guidance is it's pretty dangerous to be fighting around a nuke plant. Like, no kidding. They're really like, how much do you guys make? Like my son could have come up with that guidance. And yeah, thank you very much. So I think, the nuke plant, not surgical enough. I think Russia does everything they can to protect it. And who knows, right? Who knows how much danger this thing is under from either side. But I do think it was a buzzword, because here's the reality. It's like North Korea. I'm going to throw Zelensky in there with North Korea. You got to rattle a saber every now and then, because what happens is, especially nowadays with everything going on, it's summertime, it's July 4th. You know what? American people lose interest, man. Right? We've moved on to something else, where everybody's looking forward to Tay-Tay's new album coming out on Friday, which this episode will drop right before then. So before you listen to her album, make sure you check us out first. So that's what everybody's mind is on, is Tay-Tay's new album drop. And so Zelensky's got to figure something out to get back on the stage. And what better word to use than nuke, 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 nuke. And that's what Kim Jong-un and that dynasty has done in North Korea, is every 4, 5, 6 months, which he's been quiet lately, by the way. We'll just throw that out there. Hey, when the world starts looking away from me, I'm going to fire off a couple rockets, man, because I'm going to bring the world back on the attention for me. With Zelensky, obviously he's a politician, but he is like the epitome of a politician, because he's always got to fundraise. It's a constant state of fundraising with him, and that's the only way that they can sustain, the losses that they're going to have, and the only way they can protract this war, this conflict. He's going to have to continue to have funding from the United States. I don't know if eventually taxpayers. I mean, I think a lot of taxpayers are already tired of it. I mean, you get the spin out of the government, right, and those politicians. But when you look at at least the ones that I talk to, most people are like really couldn't really give a shit. I mean, they get it. Hey, Russia's bad. They shouldn't have invaded sovereign territory, this and that. But we've talked about it before. There are some other solutions there, and no good people in this conflict or this war. But he's in a constant state of fundraising, and so he's going to have to do everything he can to bring Ukraine back to the spotlight. So it's the Salvation Army cup out there in front of Walmart during Christmas time, man. Hey, we need money. So my question is, where do you go from the nukes? Like, what happens after this? Now what?
I Yeah, it's more of the same. I mean, I my prediction is now that the dust up you're 100% right. That was a an attention grabber on his part. I think more. I'm going to say this was all him. I'm no Putin sympathizer. I'm no Russia sympathizer. I think that two things can be true at one time. Of course, I do not agree with the amount of support that we're throwing over there, not necessarily military support, but emotional support. I do not agree with that, but at the same time, I do agree with degrading Russia. I do agree with that. I think there does need to be an off ramp, but in this one, this is 100% on Zelensky. 100%. You hit it on the head. This was an attention grabber. This was North Korea all over.
Yeah,
100%. Yeah. Speaking of which, Prigozhin.
that was my
I
next one.
think we
I
talked
wanted to
about.
get your
Yeah,
thoughts on that because
you go. Yeah, dude.
I want to get your opinion on it because, well, one,
Uh,
I've been saying Wagner Group. It's the Wagner Group. Okay, excuse me,
Wagner.
Wagner Group. Uh, so you got Prigozhin, right? That is on the march because. So here's the backstory, and you can fill it in and give us. You're a little bit more of an expert in that area than I am. So basically, they've been fighting the war in Ukraine as well. This paramilitary group, and at the end of the day, everything I've seen, most of the gains have been made by the Wagner group because the Russian military just sucks. Long story short. And then I guess a couple ground commanders lob some artilleries and rockets, go to a bunch of his troops. So he's like, F you guys. And he's had a history of conflict. He's had a history of conflict with their military leaders all the way up the chain, right? The highest levels. So I think him and the defense minister, I don't think they get along very well, if I read that correctly. But so then he says, screw this. I'm on the march to Moscow. And he starts taking territory, and he's got a lot of loyalty there for whatever reason. I think he actually took over 2 Russian bases, and from what I understand, like not even a shot was fired. Man, they're like, "Yeah, come on in, man. We're ready to rock and roll with you." And then there was reports that Putin actually left Moscow. He's like, "F this, man. I'm out of here." That happens for a couple of days. A deal is cut with Belarus. Next thing you know, Prigozhin comes out and says, "I don't want to shed the blood of basically Russian soldiers." And then he goes into exile, sort of, to Belarus, or that was the story. And then all of a sudden, what was it today, yesterday? Like he's back in Russia, and they gave him all his weapons and everything back.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird. And this is, as I said, I'm going to drop. I think I've cussed a few times already. So what's one more? When I look at this situation, I'm like, this is the most Russian shit ever. Like going all the way back to Catherine the Great. I mean, this is some Russian stuff, man. The Russians are so weird and like, Byzantine and they're chess masters. This is so fun to watch. And I really encourage y'all to, if you have to rent it or whatever or buy it, watch the movie The Death of Stalin. It's amazing. It's based on historical events, but it's kind of a comedy. But it's based on historical events, and it's just hilarious because that's how the Russians work, man. That's how they think. They're always planning ahead. And what's weird about this situation with Prigozhin, you pretty much hit it on the head, Roger, is now he's back in Russia. He's back in the fold, and he's going to collect all his military equipment that's in St. Petersburg. Like, look at a map. Like, look at geography. St. Petersburg is way the hell up north. How did all of his equipment get to St. Petersburg? This is what everyone's putting out. It's like, wait, I don't understand. So I'm not going to front and say I know what's going on. Sometimes when I'm in a professional setting, I will choose my words wisely and give my best estimate. And the last time we were in a professional setting, Roger will kind of know what I'm talking about. I made a prediction in a very professional setting before it happened, as we normally do on C3, and the professional setting lasted for 5 days. I made the assessment on day one, and by day three, my assessment had come true. So I looked like an oracle. I looked like the oracle of Delphi, and they were like, "Man, that's great. How did you know?" It's like, man, hey, we're pretty smart. But here's what I think overall. If I had to make an assessment, I think the Russian elections are coming up in 2024, and I think there are a lot of other stories behind this. But I think Prigozhin's big move right now is his little foray into running for president. I really do. I think he's going to try to run for president of Russia against Putin. There's a lot of time between now and then, but it's weird, and I love it. I love watching it, and a comedy could be made out of it. But there's been a couple of generals who have disappeared over the
Well,
past
I feel like
over the
it's a
past
setup.
week.
Like I feel like it's a setup
Yeah,
between
right.
Putin and
Yeah,
Prigozhin, but I don't know how that plays out. Like I don't
you know,
understand that.
there's been reports, right? I mean, Prigozhin and Putin are pretty tight, you know,
Right.
and Putin had to save face when all that stuff happened. And there's been reports, and we've been talking about it for almost 2 years now. Putin's health is failing a little bit. I
It's
mean,
kind of
maybe
interesting
he's going to pass the torch to him. I don't know.
because there was some early reporting that we read a couple articles that suggested that Putin had Parkinson's. And that was like 2 years ago, right?
Yeah, that was a long time
Yeah.
ago.
And
Yeah,
I haven't
yeah.
seen like zilch. And that's a pretty big deal, man. I mean, it's right up there with Biden having dementia. I mean, it's like, man, the world would know. And it was like, it was covered, in a small sliver of the internet. And then all of a sudden it was like gone. So I don't know. Is that the play? Is it just, I don't, in my mind, I haven't worked it all out yet where I want to believe this was like a Putin Prigozhin thing, but it just doesn't make sense to me yet.
The natural world order of things is Russia will always exist. We're not going to wipe Russia out. It's always going to exist. And I'm gonna say it right now. Ukraine is a part of historical Russia. That's where Russia began.
Right.
Was in Ukraine. What Zelensky is trying to do is overthrow that order, and it ain't gonna happen. It ain't gonna happen, no matter how many weapons we provide him. Uh, the story is centuries, thousands of years in the making, and Zelensky's trying to make his mark, and that's that. I don't know. It's going to be fun to watch. I don't like my tax dollars going toward it, and I'm not a fan of Russia. I just think they're hilarious. I think they're hilarious. So we got a few minutes left, Roger. So I'm going to give you three more. July 4th becoming a controversial holiday. The Philadelphia shooting, or Facebook threads competing with Twitter.
Let's do. You know what? I didn't read about the Facebook threads. Let's go down that road.
So the way I understand it, Zuckerberg has started, and apparently it's up and running. But I'm so old. I'm a Gen Xer, man. I mean, I know what I know. That's why I'm not on Instagram. I'm not willing to learn something new. You know, I'm off Facebook pretty much. I comment every now and then, but I'm Twitter now. I'm on Twitter. I don't care if Facebook's product's better. I'm used to Twitter.
Right.
So Facebook has come out with this thing called Threads, and it's supposed to compete with Twitter. And that's the bottom line, man. I mean, that's what it is. It's, and this is Zuckerberg. He's thrown down the gauntlet. And so, I don't know if we talked about this last episode, but supposedly they're gonna fight in a pay-per-view.
Yeah.
That I will buy.
Hey, we would live stream that on the C3 channel.
Oh God, it would be so good. So I don't know. I don't know if all the libs, who say I'm going to leave Twitter when Musk takes over or whatever, I don't know if they're going to bounce over to the Threads. But I mean, my initial feeling is that it's not going to gain much traction. Twitter already exists. It's good enough. People bitch and complain about it, but it still works. So why on earth would someone bounce over to Threads? I mean, is it that much better? I don't know.
I think you're just trying to hit all the different demographics. It's Anheuser-Busch, right? Everybody's like, Anheuser-Busch, Bud Light sucks. I'm going to go drink Michelob Ultra. That's also owned by Anheuser-Busch. Oh, Modelo took over as the number one, selling beer in America. Screw Bud Light. Also owned by Anheuser-Busch, right?
Well, it's owned by InBev,
Right.
which is a Belgian company that owns both Modelo and so like who's making the
Right.
money,
The
right?
money's going to the same place. Okay. And that's my point. I think with Facebook, I think it's a good move because one, when you look at Instagram, because Instagram really isn't they tried to make Reels a competitor to TikTok, um, which didn't really gain a lot of traction. And I'm kind of surprised you haven't seen Zuckerberg push it a little bit more for the banning of TikTok because that could really help Reels come out. But obviously Instagram is a different demographic as far as the users, right? We've talked about this before. Facebook is a different demographic, and same thing with Twitter and LinkedIn. So I think it's smart to bring in threads. It all comes down to marketing, and I guess that's the answer with anything is it's marketing. What are you waving at?
I'm waving at my neighbors that are walking by.
Uh, it's like, hey, you got anything to say on here? So I think
No,
they're
sorry,
trying to
sorry.
appeal to a different demographic, and that was no different than when Twitter did Vine, right? When you look at really what came out before that led to TikTok and Reels, it was Vine that was there for a while, and Periscope that it went to, or whatever the heck it was. I think those are all defunct now, but it's a smart move. The problem is, and again, this is with any business, it's like how do you market and how do you get users there? When you look at your Facebook users, they tend to be the older demographic. I'd say, and this is all anecdotal. I don't have stats in front of me, but people use it for purely entertainment as opposed to news, as opposed to to supplement or complement their profession, like LinkedIn would use for your professional uses, and Twitter. A lot of folks use that for news. Um, when you look at Thread, it's like, okay, what is that going to be used for? Are you targeting the same, because you can't target the same demographic as the Facebook user. You want to keep that. So you're going to have to go the Twitter model. So at the end of the day, man, it all just comes down to marketing. And at the end of the day, I love it. Because at the competition is what you need. What I don't like, and here's where we are failing, as consumers, it was funny because back with Twitter before Elon Musk bought it, and we were being banned all over the place. We hopped on like Mastodon, and at the time, Mastodon was like the safe haven for the right wing. And Truth Social, remember when Donald Trump got kicked off Twitter, and he started Truth Social, and now Mastodon has become the safe haven for the lefties that want to leave Twitter, and now they're having financial problems. They can't keep their platform up and running. There's even rumors that it may not even exist anymore. It's decentralized, so it's a little more complicated than that. But what sucks is you really only have a couple behemoths out there, and it would be nice to see, because like when we got kicked off YouTube, I mean, our stuff gets uploaded to Rumble. The problem is Rumble has a size limit based on the length of our video, and so not every episode makes it up to Rumble. So that's one thing we have to be cognizant of. But it's still, even with Rumble, it just doesn't have the market cap as a YouTube. And that's the problem that I have with Facebook and even Twitter to an extent. Twitter, I think right now is a little more free flowing. So you're getting a little bit of everything, which is good. But you need competition, man. Competition in the market is just going to lead to a better product.
So what were those other sites? There was Mastodon, and then we tried a couple others. There's that one that Amazon took off their servers, and then there was that other one. Do you
Parlor,
remember the names of them?
Parlor,
Parlor, and the one I thought had some serious promise, and I
Gab.
was like, surely Gab. It was so Gab, Mastodon. I don't remember Mastodon that much. Gab and Parlor, right? I felt like back then. I feel like to this day that the people running that were in it for the quick money. So they didn't try to improve the platform. They didn't
Right.
invest in the types of coders that would have made that platform better, and it never got better. And that's why it didn't last long, for me at least. It didn't live up to what I thought it would be, and that's why I like Elon Musk. He's so rich, he doesn't give an f. And it's like I think he really believes, for the most part, in what he's saying when it comes to what this we need to try to work this out, which we could talk for another hour on the limiting the tweets thing
Right.
and why that happened, because there was a good reason. Boy, but that was a risky business decision what he did.
That was a piss
What he
poor
did was
rollout.
so well, it was maybe some warning would have been nice, but he's so smart. I think there was a reason behind it. Maybe I'm giving him too much credit, but from what I read, the reason he did limit the posts on or limit the amount of tweets you could read on Twitter, there was a good reason for it. Uh, but again, poor execution. Good idea, poor execution. Just like Ron DeSantis' campaign rollout. But yeah, I feel taken advantage of by particularly Gab and
Well,
Parlor.
Gab is still up and
Uh,
running.
I know,
For
but
whatever
it hasn't
reason, it
improved.
just
I don't think it's improved at all.
yeah, I haven't hopped on it lately, but you're right. I mean, when you look at Parlor and you look at Gab, and Parlor kind of got screwed, just through AWS, right? I mean, Amazon did not do them any favors. You lose your server, you're in a bad way. And with
Yeah,
Gab, I haven't hopped on there in several months, but it looked like Gab was getting funding. They were making money, or I shouldn't say making money. They had money coming in, and the improvements. And I get it; it doesn't happen overnight, but it goes back to where we talked about bringing manufacturing back to the US and away from China. There was a significant emotional event there that happened very, very quickly. And when those events happen, you have a very small window to operate and execute. And I just feel that we missed it. Right. And I say we collectively,
yeah.
all of us, I think we all just kind of missed it. And Parlor, maybe their own fault, maybe not. Gab, I'll have to hop back on there for the next couple of weeks. Let me see if it has improved. But there was, I was willing to give, like you, I was willing to give it a couple of weeks, right? And it just never got any better.
Yeah, I think we're in a transitional phase now. We'll see what happens. I don't. I am free market. Maybe not so much as Roger, but I do believe that monopolies are bad. Um, that's why I like the competition. Like I think you were saying that too. So real quick, Philadelphia shooting newsflash: the person was transgendered. We'll just keep it with that. I mean, hey, it's
BLM
what have
supporter
we
too,
always
right?
said? Yep. Okay, so but I don't want people to get it twisted. It's like transgender, whatever. Dude, it's about what's going on in the mind. It's about
Yes.
I want to see the toxicology report.
Right.
It's like I don't care if they're transgender or not. Were they messed up in the head?
Yep.
And I'm not necessarily saying because they were transgender they were messed up in the head, but it's just like that's all we're gonna hear. Is this that's it. And no more. So that because they're transgender and it doesn't fit a narrative, it wasn't a Kyle Rittenhouse kind of guy, that's gonna disappear from the news. And boy, that was a particularly brutal shooting,
Yeah.
based on the
Well, the
victims.
news blew up until they came out with the suspect, right? And then it was like,
Boy, yeah, it's a real shame because we're not getting to the root of the problem,
right.
and that's the point. So it's all narrative, right? So July 4th, I was a little shocked. It's become such a hot button issue, and that's a real disappointment for me. It's more black pilling because July 4th has always been, well, not always, but in my adult years, it's been my favorite holiday. This year, uh, because of stuff we had to do, we went down to Amarillo and celebrated July 4th with the family, which was super nice. But because we were doing that, we couldn't make the local July 4th festivities. Sorry, Rodney. Rodney listens. Rodney, I wasn't blowing you off. I just kind of ignored my phone all day and went to Amarillo and had a July 4th with the family. But yeah, it was a good July 4th overall. The weather was good. We drove back from Amarillo to Lubbock, and I predicted to my wife, okay, when we hit Canyon, Happy, Plainview, Hale Center, Abernathy, and Lubbock, every time we hit a city, we're going to see fireworks. We're going to see rednecks putting off fireworks at midnight. And sure enough, that's what happened. So I hope they're setting them off for the right reasons. But good July 4th overall. I really enjoyed it. Today's July 5th. This will probably be out 7th or 8th. I don't know. But good July 4th. Always enjoy July 4th.
Yeah, same here. We, Arizona, obviously very, very dry and things catch on fire very, very easily. And our small town, the police department, I think it's been around for like a year now, and they have a fire ban every year, basically at campsites, everything from like May to October. You can't do anything like that, and we can't have any aerials, whatever. Dude, people here do not give a shit. And I say that in a good way. I love it. If there's one day you're going to do it, man, it's July 4th. And the police department put out on Facebook, hey, we're going to have patrols going around town, and we're going to be out there educating the public on fire. One, I did not see one police officer, and we bought some fireworks up in New Mexico. And, thanks to my neighbor. I say we, my neighbor Steve. You met him. They bought some fireworks from New Mexico and started launching them up, and it was we had 4 packs, so it was like 66 launchers in the first set, and then another like 48 or 24 in the second. So a butt ton, right? And these are all aerials, man. You're talking about the mortars or whatever. And it's just like, hey, man, nobody cares. And it's funny because no police. Yeah, but everybody's doing it around town. It's not like you just have one family. Like literally, the police would not be able to respond to all that stuff. But I love it, dude. I love the fireworks. If there's one day, and I actually heard somebody explain the other day, the fireworks is not just, about the fireworks and celebration. It's about the bombs bursting in air, right? That's what it's supposed to be representative of. And to be honest with you, we saw some folks on Twitter and this and that, I hate July 4th and this. Here's my only thing. Like, if you don't like this country, leave. Just leave. Like, why do you get on there? Like, I hate the flag. I hate the country. I hate this. I hate that. Just leave. Because these are people that aren't even working to make it any better. It's not like, hey, look, we're a great country. We've got our flaws. We're not a perfect union. We always strive to be perfect. And there's better things that we can do. So I'm going to run for office. I'm going to start a grassroots campaign. I'm going to get out there and do some community service. And I'm just as guilty of this. We talk about it all the time. All these people get on there and talk about how crappy we are. They do nothing to support their local government. They do nothing community service wise. They do nothing donation wise. They just sit there and they bitch. And it's like, hey, if you're to that point, then just leave. Go to Mexico, go to Canada, go to Venezuela, go to Cuba. I don't care where you go, just leave the country. Why do if you hate it that bad, and these folks have resources, I mean, I would assume, they appear like they have resources, go to Europe. If Europe is so great and they've got all the freedoms you want and we're so backwards and behind times, just go. What I did think was interesting, and I'll close out with this. I saw this the other day, and maybe one of you guys brought it up because, orange man bad, he's a racist, white supremacist, this and that. The only living president whose ancestors did not own slaves was President Trump. And I'll leave it with that.
That's good. That's good. But the lefties would have plenty of stuff to come back on that. So real quick, as you may have noticed by now, Josh is not with us tonight. And I wonder why.
Hey,
who's on vacation again?
He's getting screwed by Pete Buttigieg right now. And we're talking about like he's literally, I think our last word was he was at the gate for like 2 hours.
Yes. Yeah. I think it was like 3 hours. It had to be because he said, "Oh, we've been here for 2 hours." And he texted us an hour later. It's like, "We're still here, but we're about to leave." And what was cool about it, though, is he said that they were served up free drinks and snacks. So whatever airline that is, props on them. But, Josh told a cool story along the lines of what Roger was saying, where he actually sent us screenshots of what they're in North Carolina where he lives, where the sheriff was like sent out a reminder. The sheriff's office said, "Hey, no fireworks within the city limits. It's a crime, but most of our deputies are going to be controlling traffic tonight." And
love it.
That was it. And I was like, man. And Josh's point was, that's how important a sheriff is, man. That local government, it's so important. They have so much power. There are laws, but you can choose which ones to enforce and which ones not, and that can go both ways. So, we really wanted to try to get the three of us, but Roger and Josh and I have endeavored to persevere to put more out. So the three of us have some crazy schedules, and we're just going to put them out when we can. So we'll try to get all three of us on here. It's better. I think it's better when all three of us are on, obviously. So we appreciate y'all listening, especially those Josh fans. Ryan, looking at you. Ryan is the biggest Josh fan that there is. Oh my God. So, and hey, shout out to Josh's dad, man. Hang in there. We check on you all the time. Really hope to meet you, man. Really hope to meet you one of these days. We got some great stories we want to exchange with you. So, I mean, until next time, I mean, we try to give everybody shout outs and we forget. We really appreciate y'all listening. Time's the most valuable commodity on earth. Appreciate y'all listening. So until the next time, keep your canteen cups full and tightly secured.